Hello and welcome to the second part of a video that features a flight of the Citation 10 from Laminar Research from Truckee, California down to Palm Springs. So when we left our last video, we were just getting ready to taxi. So I released the parking brake and applied a little bit of power, and using my pedals we'll head to the end of the runway. I'll save you the boredom of the trip down the taxiway and we'll go right to the end of our runway. And here we'll do our final checklist, things that we want to do just before we take off. We'll start with our strobe light and then our pitot heat. Then our landing lights, turn off the taxi light. Then we want to check some of our control surfaces. We'll start with our speed brakes. There are two positions on this aircraft. And then we'll check our thrust reversers. And finally, control surfaces, ailerons, elevators, and rudder. And then our transponder is flipped on. We'll just check our ECAS and it's clear except for the notification that the APU is still on. We will leave it on until we get to 10,000 feet. So we have been cleared for takeoff, so we'll head out to the runway. Just double check flaps. I'm going to pull up my PFD so I can monitor my speeds. And slowly apply power up to toga. Passing through 90, 100, and V1 rotate. Gear up. And when we are 400 feet up, turn on the autopilot, click navigation, and then flight level change. And notice I'm changing our speed to 180. And we will maintain 180 till we get to 10,000 feet. This thing climbs very quickly. And when you take off from 6,000 feet, you get to 10 relatively quickly. And so we begin our huge circular SID. First we turn to the right, and then straight, and then left turns. Okay, we are at 10,000 feet. So, lights off. We begin to retract our flaps as we reach our 180. And we can also turn off our APU. We have a warning light because the APU is off. So the airplane is cleaned up. Quick peek out the window. You can see Lake Tahoe just off that left wing. And we continue on our SID. By the way, I'm only going to be showing transitional parts of our en route flight, but we will have an extended section at the end when we fly our star and approach into Palm Springs. Now that we are above 10,000 feet, I have changed the climb speed to 270. So the flight level change button is on, but I'm using the wheel to angle the nose down, pick up speed. We are approaching our first cloud deck. One thing that is greatly improved in X-Plane are the clouds. They've done a really great job. And they've even gotten better since 12 was first introduced. They're quite believable. I'm using manual weather right now just so that I can control our conditions for takeoff and landing. But the METAR downloaded weather is rather impressive, and I understand there are plans for it to get even better. So we are now approaching our transition at Palisades VOR. So now we are flying directly to push the waypoint that is the beginning of our Q11 airway. So seat belts in the cruise position. All right, there's the warning that we are 1,000 feet from our top of climb. And as we get there, one task we have is to reduce our speed. So we'll pull back on our power. I find that somewhere in the mid 80s on our N1 percentage is enough to keep us at a good clip, but yet not overspeed. The other thing I want to do before too long is I want to check my top of descent. So click on cruise and you can see that we have 208 miles to go. So that's about 20 minutes or so. All right, we're coming up on push, where we will begin our turn towards the Q1 airway. You can see that on our high altitude chart. Have to have one flyby. Okay, we're getting close to our star, which transitions at Oive. So our FMS is showing 45 miles to go, and you can see the top of descent on our MFD. So now we are getting close to our top of descent, so I'm dialing down our altitude to 1,000 feet. I'm going to let the aircraft manage our altitudes, and we begin our descent by pressing the VNAV button and then the Alt button. We're over Palmdale, which is just to the east of the Los Angeles Basin. Clean up my MFD. A lot of airports in the area, and you can see Palmdale upper left-hand corner. So, trying to pick up ATIS. It's kind of hard to understand, but I wanted to get our altimeter.
Temperature 14, dew point -7, altimeter 2992, arriving runway 13 right, departing runway 13 right, advise on
So,
contact you have.
Barrow is going to be standard 29.92. Turn off ATIS. Alright, we are level at 16,000 feet, and you can see on our FMS that we need to hold there to get over that last ridge before we descend into the Coachella Valley. On our right we have the Inland Empire. San Bernardino, Ontario Airport is right under the wing. So we continue to maintain 16,000 feet till we get to our waypoint Biddy and over that range of mountains. Off on the left we have Big Bear Lake, and there's an airport at the very end that's kind of fun to fly into. We are rapidly approaching that waypoint Biddy, and you can see now on our PFD that we are descending down to Moron at 14,000 feet, and then on to Fern, our transition. Speaking of which, we just began our descent down to Fern at 11,000 feet. We're crossing over the path we will be making shortly in our circular star. We have the Coachella Valley below us. And now I need to slow down our speed to under 250 as we approach the 10,000 foot mark. So I'll use my speed brakes. It's the full position. and that should get us down to below 250. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm going to just let the camera roll all the way to the ground. This was a request by a follower that I not cut away and instead allow them to see the complete approach, even though at times it's like watching grass grow. I'm going to get my screens popped out here so I can follow without looking down. I don't know where that rain is coming from, but you can see the airport just under the right wing. So we begin our first 180, turning out over the foothills east of the Coachella Valley. Our first waypoint is Truckee at 7,100 feet. You will notice, however, that the airplane does not always hit these initial altitudes, but eventually everything irons itself out, and as we get closer to our final approach, you'll see that the altitudes align very nicely. Palm Springs behind us. Landing lights on. Let's start our APU so that we have power once we are on the ground. Flip on our tail flood. Since it's now dark, or getting dark. So straight ahead is what we call the high desert, all east of LA. Finish starting the APU. As we continue our descent. So you can see already we're still at 8,600 feet, and we're supposed to be at 71. But again, things should iron themselves out shortly. So our direction now is almost a downwind to our runway 13 right. We have the city of Yucca Valley ahead of us. I'm going to move these down, get them out of the way. Also, I'm trying to maintain about 220 knots in our descent. A little tricky with the level flight and then sudden descents. I find that the displays are just too bright when it's dark outside. I wish I could turn down or dim the ECAS screen, the center one. The controls in the Citation allow me to dim the PFD and MFD. So we are now over the Yucca Valley as we begin our turn back towards Palm Springs. You'd almost consider this a long base leg. I've often wondered why some runways do not allow an ILS because of the way they are placed. And I guess Palm Springs falls into that category. Seems like if they had aimed it a little bit differently, we wouldn't have this long RNAV approach and they would be able to have an ILS approach. But it's really close to the mountains. And this airport was probably created back before there were ILS approaches. And it's conveniently located closer to Palm Springs. It would have to be out a ways in order to allow an ILS. So you can see our altitudes are starting to be a little bit more accurate. At Wasatch, we want to be at 6,000 feet, and it looks like we are very close to that now. Our glide path magenta triangle on our PFD is showing us a little bit low. All right, we level off for a moment. Our airport is on the left at the base of those mountains. You can see the flashing green and white light now, to the left of your screen. And we are descending again down to Lacob. So when I first began the Star, I was trying to maintain a speed of around 220, and now I'm slowing down to around 200. can see Highway 10 stretching across in front of us. Goes all the way to LA on the one end and all the way to Phoenix on the other. We'll extend our slats. Mount Jacinto, just in front of us. Another notch of flaps, 5%, or 5 degrees. The aircraft is sticking pretty close to the posted altitudes. I'm bringing the speed down slowly. And we are about ready to turn final. Another degree of flaps. We're at 15 now. And you can see our runway straight ahead. Gear down. That will slow us down. So need to be very careful about our power management. I find that with full flaps and the gear out, I need to be at about 60% on the N1 in order to maintain the proper nose attitude.
1,000.
On the windscreen center post, there's a green donut that indicates our nose is in the proper attitude for landing. So I have turned off the autopilot. I'll just hand fly it now. Maintaining about 120 knots. The final notch of flaps has been extended. So we have full flaps, gear down. Just need to get lined up here. Forgot the taxi lights. This runway has a long displaced threshold, so we land a little bit further down.
200.
Our green donut is showing everything as it should be.
$100. 50. 50.
Tower view.
40. 30. 20. 10.
Now I found that you have to be careful when applying reverse thrust. It can force the nose up. So I'm pushing forward on my joystick. And still manages to float a little bit. So after exiting the runway, we'll stop here and clean up the airplane for taxi. So retract the flaps. And turn off the landing lights. And turn off our strobe. And continue our taxi to the FBO. Again, I'm cutting the taxi short in the video. Throttles to the off position. Great sounds in this aircraft. And we'll let people unfasten their safety belt. Everyone's anxious to get out. We can kill our APU. Didn't really need it, I suppose. Shutdowns have been pretty quick. Packs off. Pitot heat off. Probably should have turned that off before the APU because they have a huge draw. Generators off, batteries off. Just returning everything to its cold and dark state. Time to lock it up for the night. So thank you for joining me in this two-part series, flying the Citation 10 from Truckee down to Palm Springs, demonstrating its capability to fly an extended SID on one end and a long RNP approach on the other. So I hope you are encouraged to try this yourself. Until next time.